Okay, I want to circle back around to this big recording session here because I just want to talk about organizing your session just a little bit, um, particularly how we do these groups. You may have seen this as when I opened this before. So basically, you can select any tracks that you want by clicking on one and then shift clicking another one, and then Command G. That's going to turn them into a group. So here's the group I just made. Then I can go Command R on the group and rename them. What do we have here? Bass, guitar, and guitar. So I'll say bass and guitar. Okay. There's a couple advantages to doing this. One is just to organize your session so you can see what's what. You can see how I did it here. I've got rhythm section, saxes, brass, a whole ton of MIDI stuff, and then more MIDI stuff that I didn't put in the group yet. But if I wanted to, I could easily take this track. Let's open this MIDI. I could take this track and drag it up into all MIDI, and now it's in there. So I could do that with these, all of these if I wanted to. In fact, let's do it. I should be able to go down to the bottom and shift click to select all of those. Click and drag to move them up there. And now they're all in this all MIDI tab. Okay, so now here's my whole session. Right, I have this big, huge session just narrowed down to 4 things. So when I'm ready to work on the saxes, I can open up the saxes and get to work on them. When I'm ready to work on the brass, I can get in there this way. And the rhythm section, I can get in this way. Within the rhythm section, I have more groups like drums, bass and guitar, etc. You can have groups within groups. In fact, you can have groups within groups within groups. Someone in one of the Ableton trainer forums tried to figure out how many groups you could go deep on groups within groups within groups, and I think they got to like 1,000, and it still works just fine. So you can make groups within groups until your heart's content. If you want to ungroup something, I think it's Shift Command G, or you can just Control click and go to ungroup. Yeah, Shift Command G. So grouping tracks is super helpful when you've got a big session going. Even when I'm producing something, not recording, but I'm just working on building an electronic track, I'll group my drum stuff, my synth stuff, my bass stuff, and then my live stuff like guitars or whatever into different groups so that I can focus in on them as I like. One more thing about groups is that actually once you create a group, you can put effects on that group. So here's my drums, for example. Okay, so my drum group has all of these different drum tracks in it. But when I make the group, I get an activator for that group, so I can turn off all the drums if I want. I have a volume for that group, so if I want the drums to all be louder, I can mix it there. That's not a great idea, but you can do it that way. I've got different sends I can use, but most importantly, I can put effects on all the tracks in that group by just putting them here. Effectively, this is like routing, another kind of bus sort of. So you can see in my drum track, I put the glue compressor on that track so that there's some compression happening on all of these files. In fact, I did that on all of these. So if I go to the saxes, they have a compressor. The brass has a compressor. So that can be really handy to do when you're working on a session, putting your effects on a group rather than on individual tracks. Depending on what you're doing, that might be useful, it might not. But in recording these, I wanted the same kind of compressor on like all my saxes. I did a bunch of effects to each track as needed, but the compression is all being handled on the outside in the group. So something to keep in mind while you're working. Okay, one last organizing thing is linked tracks. If you're working on something and you say, for example, this trumpet 1 and trumpet 2, I want to make sure that those don't fall out of sync. And when I edit one of them, I want to edit the other one of them. Okay, so I'm going to move these right next to each other for the moment so we can look at them. Trumpet 1, trumpet 2, okay? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to select both, and then I'm going to go down here and I'm going to select link tracks. Okay, now they get a little thing there. Okay, now watch what happens. If I move these tracks, if I move this one, I'm moving the other one, right? If I select something in one of those tracks, it's selecting it in both. If I cut something, it's in both. If I draw a fade in one of them, it gets drawn in both. These are linked. You can link like tons of tracks together to do stuff. You can even warp this way, which is sometimes really useful. See, it says 2 audio class with different warp markers are selected in 2 tracks. If I hit reset warp markers, it's going to get rid of them, but then it's going to let me warp these together, which can be really useful. Now, I don't want to do that now because I've already warped these a whole bunch. I can change some settings around it. I can change the volume of both of them at the same time, the pitch, anything I need to. So linking things together that you need to stay together is a really important tool. To unlink them, I'm going to select the same 2 tracks and just go to unlink tracks. Okay, now they're separated. All right, so explore linked tracks if you ever need to keep a bunch of stuff together.